Welcome to Module 6, Basic Cryptography, of the series that we followed under Network Security Fundamentals topic. In this module, you will learn how to define cryptography. You will be able to describe hash, symmetric, and asymmetric cryptographic algorithms. You'll be able to explain different cryptographic attacks, and you'll be able to list various ways in which cryptography is being used these days. So defining cryptography involves understanding what it is and how it is being used. It also involves knowing the limitations of cryptography. So Greeks were actually the first to look into cryptography. So their challenge of sending a message through individuals who were traveling between points and at the same time making sure that message context is not going to be revealed to the enemy started the idea of cryptography for them. So the whole thing was about scrambling information so it cannot be read. Basically, what happens is through any kind of algorithm, you're going to take a text and then using a key or an algorithm, you're going to convert it into a ciphertext. And the key also is being referred to as cipher. What Greek came up with, the first was steganography, which was hiding an existence of data. An image, audio, or video file can contain hidden messages embedded in the file. So what they used to do was they were cutting the hair off the messenger so short that they were able to write on the skin, on the head skin, and basically the message was on the head. Then they were giving it time so that the hair grow back. And when the carrier was moving between 2 points, if being captured by enemy, they were not being able to see the message because message was basically hidden. At the destination, they were cutting the hair off again, where they were able to read the message. So any kind of algorithm that helps hiding data in different locations of a file, it can be a header, between different sections, between the files, distributed between different files and all that is basically what cryptography is all about. Looking at this one, let's take a quick look on what's happening. So we have a message to be hidden, right? For instance, this one says the secret password. This message is going to be added to a file, a huge file, which has an image, right? An image, and it's going to be hidden between different places in the file. In this case, you have metadata header 1, which talks about the file size, right? The spaces in the file and all that. And there is a header 2 down here, and your message is going to hide between these two. So if someone gains access to this file, it's going to see the Statue of Liberty. There is no idea of that message is being hidden here, especially in the bitmap images. We do have a lot of bits that we can convert without really affecting the image and the quality of the image so that no one can notice if it is hidden or not, and then it can be revealed at the destination. The scope of this module, the discussion in this module is not about the details of how to do that. It's mostly about understanding what the cryptography itself is. Speaking of cryptography, we're going to land on encryption, right? So encryption is the process of changing the original text into a secret message using the techniques of cryptography. Changing the secret message back to its original form, although is known as decryption. So in a cryptographic communication, encryption and decryption have to happen constantly. Plain text is the unencrypted data to be encrypted or is the output of the decryption. So plain text is what you read, what's the actual message. Ciphertext is the scrambled and unreadable output of encryption. Clear text data is the data stored or transmitted without any kind of encryption. We do have protocols like HTTP that transfer data without encryption. So if being intercepted by a malicious actor, the information can be found and can be elicited. Plain text data is input to a cryptographic algorithm, which we call it a key or a cipher. It consists of procedures based on a mathematical formula used to encrypt and decrypt the data. The more sophisticated this mathematical formula is, the more sophisticated the cryptographic algorithm is going to be. Also, the number of bits used for the cipher key defines how sophisticated the algorithm is. So the larger the key, the more sophisticated the algorithm. A key itself is a mathematical value entered into the algorithm to produce ciphertext. The reverse process uses the key to decrypt the message. Just remember, very soon we're going to discuss that in asymmetric encryption and decryption or public key infrastructure, we're not going to be using the same exact key to lock or unlock, but we will discuss that later. A substitution cipher substitutes one character for another. So basically, you take the word hello and substitute each character with a different one for, say, just for the sake of understanding how it works. If we do have hello, we can go ahead and say, okay, substitute each character with the next character on the ASCII code list. For example, H is going to be substituted by I, which is next on the list. E is going to be substituted by D, which is the next, right? And so on and so forth. So you're going to have a word which is literally meaningless for anyone who doesn't know how you came to the word. Excuse me. So one type of substitution cipher is ROT13, which entire alphabet is rotated 13 steps. So in my example, we substituted A with B. In rotation 13 or ROT13, A is going to be substituted with N. You can come up with your own algorithm or your own substitution cipher. You can even get the special characters involved and make it more sophisticated for someone to decrypt it. An XOR cipher is based on the binary operation exclusive OR that compares two bits. If the bits are different, a 1 is returned. If they are identical, a 0 is being returned. And now you have the comparison between the actual data and the encrypted data, which can be used at the destination to decrypt and come up with the original message. Look at this image. We do have the plain text over here, which is being fed to the encryption algorithm, which at the same time is being fed with a key that gives us the ciphertext. And the ciphertext is being sent to the receiver. When the receiver receives this, it's going to feed it into a decryption algorithm, which basically matches the encryption algorithm and uses the exact same key. Like this key and this key are the same now. This mostly is called symmetrical encryption because the encrypting and decrypting keys are exactly the same. So as a result of decryption, which again is being fed the ciphertext and key at the same time, you're going to have the plain text back. Very simple, very easy process, straightforward, and can be managed by most of the computers we do have out there. Let's see, where do we use cryptography? Cryptography can provide several basic protections. Confidentiality, remember the CIA triad, right? Confidentiality ensures only authorized parties can view it. And again, it all goes back to how strong the algorithm is, because all of these algorithms, in a way or other, are breakable. We just make it more difficult for the malicious actor to get it decrypted, and we get it close to super difficult, so almost no one can decrypt it. The integrity part ensures information is correct and unaltered. Authentication ensures sender can be verified through cryptography. So if you're logging into your Bank of America account through the encrypted authentication, you basically are being identified by the bank as the sole owner of the account. Non-repudiation proves that the user performed an action. So now as a user, you cannot log into a system, break something, get out and say, hey, I was not there. Because there is the authentication that shows it was you who did that action. Later, we will call and talk about the concept of AAA, authentication, authorization, and accounting, which the accounting part basically audits what user does in a system, which is going to lead to the existence of non-repudiation. Obfuscation is making something obscure or unclear. And that's also coming with the cryptography. So the whole idea is to provide security through obscurity. This is an approach in security where virtually any system can be made secure as long as outsiders are unaware of it or how it functions. That's why you see a lot of entities, a lot of industries do not publish their network architecture diagram. They do not publish the technologies they use within their networks. Cryptography can also provide protection to data as the data resides in any of the three states. We do have data in processing, data in transit, and data at rest. Data in processing, which also called data in use, is the data actions being performed by endpoint devices. This is when your computer is actually processing the information. Data in transit are actions that transmit the data across a network, going through OSI model layers, encapsulating information, sending it over the network to a specific destination till it arrives at the destination and gets decapsulated so that the payload is revealed to the user at the receiving end. Data at rest is the data that is stored on electronic media. So basically, you're referring to anything on your hard drive, anything on a CD-ROM, anything on a flash drives, and so on and so forth. Like anything else, cryptography comes with limitations. One of the major limitations of cryptography are the mobile devices, the devices who actually are using low power. As we discussed before, when everything comes to conserving energy and prolonging the battery life, you are facing lack of necessary power in order to calculate sophisticated algorithms of cryptography. A number of small electronic devices, like your cell phone, which use low power, have grown significantly throughout these years. These devices need to be protected from threat actors, especially if they are devices connected to the enterprise network. Applications that require extremely fast response times also face cryptography limitations. So the issue here is resource versus security constraint. This is a limitation in providing strong cryptography due to the tug of war between available resources, which are time and energy, and the security provided by cryptography. So all the resources on your device are trying to race and gain more power, more time of the CPU. And this means the cryptographic algorithm that you want to apply is not going to win the game. It is important that there be a high resiliency in cryptography, which is the ability to quickly recover from the resources versus security constraints. So you're looking for the algorithms and technology and techniques that can actually win this race for you and bring up the ability to apply a stronger cryptography algorithm, despite the fact that the resources of time and power are scarce in mobile devices and low power devices generally. So if you look at this triangle, there is always this idea of, okay, we have security and energy and latency are the constraints of it, right? So when you go up, you have a stronger security. However, you're going to consume extreme amount of power. So you're going to cause low power and low latency. As you come down and your security drops, then you're going to have less problem of power and latency. So this triangle pointing downward is showing how your security changes according to your low latency and low power. However, newer mobile devices, like the newer cell phones, are coming out with good amount of power to start considering them more reliable devices when it comes to cryptography and security measures. Now let's see if you can answer this question. Which of the following is a term that proves that a user performed an action with a computer or on a data? Basically, which one is referring to when user has no option but to accept what they did? So the survey says the answer is B, non-repudiation. Repudiation means denial. Non-repudiation is the inability to deny. So in information technology, non-repudiation is the process of pricing that a user performed an action, such as creating a file, sending an email, deleting a file, changing a configuration, or anything as such. Now let's talk about cryptographic algorithms. A fundamental difference in cryptographic algorithms is the amount of data processed at a time. So again, remember that we said whenever you want to go through cryptographic algorithms or cryptography as a whole, what happens is you're consuming the resources, right? Which these resources can be anything like time or energy. For that reason, what we do is we use different algorithms so that we actually can address these issues. So one variation of cryptographic algorithms is based on the device, if any, that is used in the cryptographic process. During the last half of the 20th century, all cryptography algorithms became computer-based. Whereas for the first half of the century, people used calculating machines, like normal calculators. Before that time, cryptographic algorithms were entirely hand calculated. An example is the one-time pad, or OTP, which combines plain text with a random key. A pad is basically a long sequence of random letters which was added and combined to the actual data. But now, what we do is we are looking into more advanced algorithms which are based on computer calculations. You have the stream cipher, which takes one character and replaces with another. That's one class of algorithms. The other class are the block ciphers, which they manipulate an entire block of plain text at one time, and they move. And then we have the sponge function, which takes as input as a string of any length and returns a string of any requested variable length. So the three categories of cryptographic algorithms are hash algorithms, symmetric cryptographic algorithms, and asymmetric cryptographic algorithms. Let's start with talking about the hash algorithms. One type of cryptographic algorithms is a one-way hash algorithm. A hash algorithm creates unique digital fingerprints of a set of data. This process itself is called hashing, and it results in a fingerprint that we call digest, or sometimes called a message digest or a hash. This message digest represents the contents. Hashing is used primarily for comparison purposes. So basically, you need to have hash at the source and then at the destination so that you can run the data through the same algorithm and compare it to make sure the data is not tampered with. Although hashing is a cryptographic algorithm, its purpose is not to create ciphertext that can later be decrypted. Instead, hashing is intended to be one way, and that its digest cannot be reversed to reveal the original set of data. For example, when 12 is multiplied by 34, the result is going to be 408. If a user were asked to determine the two numbers used to create number 408, it would not be possible to work backward and derive the original numbers that produce the results. There is no absolute certainty because there are too many mathematical possibilities, like even 1 times 408, 2 times 204, 3 times 136, and so on and so forth can produce the same result. Hashing is similar in that it is not possible to determine the plain text from the digest, even if you gain access to the digest. A hashing algorithm is considered secure if it has certain characteristics. First and foremost, the fixed size. A digest of a short set of data should produce the same size as a digest of the long set of the data. So the digest size should be independent from the size of the data. It should be unique. So two different sets of data cannot produce the same digest. Changing a single letter in one data set should produce an entirely different digest. It should be original. It should not be possible to produce a data set that has a desired predefined hash. It should be secure. The resulting hash cannot be reversed to determine the original plaintext. Hashing is often used as a check to verify that the original content of an item have not been changed. For example, digests are often calculated and then posted on websites for files that can be downloaded. Like when you download operating systems such as Kali Linux, which we discussed previously as one of the most commonly used operating systems in cybersecurity. As you can see here, you have the link to download, and then you're being given a hash. So after you download it, you can go ahead and hash the file you downloaded with the same algorithm and compare it with the hash that you have here. And this way, if anyone has tampered with it, you're going to figure out and you can clearly verify that the download was actually clean or it's tampered with, but usually shows that the existence of a Trojan is a high possibility and you want to drop that. Common hash algorithms include the MD, SHA, and WriteMet. So the message digest, or MD, is one of the earliest hash algorithms, which basically is a family of algorithms known as message digest. Versions of MD hashes were introduced over almost 20 years, from MD2 in 1989 to MD6 in 2008. The most widely used of these algorithms is MD5. So MD5 hash is very well known. This hash algorithm uses 4 variables of 32 bits, each in a round-robin fashion to create a value that is then compressed. Serious weaknesses have been identified in MD5, and it's no longer considered suitable for use. So MD5 hash is not the one that you want to use if you are starting to use hashes today. Of course, MD6 has some security issues as well, but compared to all the other message digest algorithms, is the most reliable one. SHA, or secure hash algorithm, is another family of hashes which basically is more secure than message digest. SHA-1 was developed in 1993, but is no longer considered suitable for use. SHA-2 has 6 variants. The most common are SHA-256 and SHA-384, and also SHA-512. And note that these last numbers indicate the length of the bits of the digest that is generated. So basically SHA-3, SHA-2, and all those, they have larger size, right? In 2015, after 8 years of competition, between 51 original entries, SHA-3 was announced a new standard. One design goal of SHA-3 was to make it dissimilar to the previous hash algorithms to prevent threat actors from building on earlier work of compromising the algorithm. So if you're using SHA-3, you're basically looking at a low power possible algorithm without any similarity to the older algorithms, which makes it pretty reliable. So next one that we want to discuss is the Race Integrity Primitives Evaluation Message Digest, or RIPE-MD. The primary design feature of RIPE-MD is two different and independent parallel chains of competition. So the result of which is then combined at the end of the process. All versions of RIPE-MD are based on the length of the digest created, including RIPE-MD 128, 256, and 320. Now that we discussed the hash algorithms, is a good time to go back and talk about symmetric and asymmetric cryptographic algorithms. The original cryptographic algorithms for encrypting and decrypting data are symmetric cryptographic algorithms. These are using the same key to encrypt and decrypt the data. For example, data encrypted, and let me just go here and talk over this one. Data encrypted by Bob with a key can only be decrypted by Alice using the same key, because the key must be kept private or confidential. Symmetric encryption is also called private key cryptography. So you're going to hear the terminology private key and public key cryptography more often when you are in the field of cybersecurity. And now you understand why this is called private key, because this key needs to be kept private. You cannot publicize it, because if anyone has the key, that's all they need to decrypt the algorithm. Sorry, decrypt the data. Symmetric encryption or symmetric cryptography can provide strong encryption. If the key kept secure between the sender and all the recipients, everything is good. However, if it is not being kept secure, the problem that's going to arise from that is the algorithm is no good for providing any security. Common symmetric cryptographic algorithms are DES, 3DES, AES, RC, and Blowfish. Data encryption standard, or DES, is one of the first widely used symmetric cryptographic algorithms, and basically US government officially adopted DES as a standard for encrypting unclassified information. Although DES was once widely implemented, it is no longer considered suitable for use. Triple data encryption standard, or 3DES, was designed to replace DES. As its name implies, 3DES uses 3 rounds of encryption instead of just 1. The ciphertext of 1 round becomes the entire input for the second iteration. 3DES employs a total of 48 iterations in its encryption. Basically, that's 3 iterations times 16 rounds. The most secure version of 3DES uses different keys for each round. And this actually is going to make life very difficult for someone to break into 3DES. Next, we'll look at Advanced Encryption Standard, or AES. It's a symmetric algorithm that performs 3 steps on every block. Basically, we're talking about 128 bits of plain text. Within step 2, multiple rounds are performed depending upon the key size. A 128-bit key performs basically 9 rounds, a 192-bit key performs 11 rounds, and a 256-bit key, known as AES 256, uses 13 rounds. Within each round, bytes are substituted and rearranged, and then a special manipulation is performed based on the new arrangement. To date, no attacks have been successful against AES. So basically, this is the known data. It does not necessarily mean you have 100% security here. As you already know, there is no such thing as 100% security. But to the best of the knowledge of the security society, no one has been able to break into AES. RC, or reversed cipher, is a family of 6 algorithms. RC4, the most common RC cipher, is a stream cipher that accepts key up to 128 bits in length. And finally, Blowfish is a block cipher algorithm that operates on 64-bit blocks and can have a key length from 32 to 448 bits. To date, no significant weakness have been identified. A later derivation of Blowfish, known as Toefish, is also considered a very strong algorithm, although it has not been used as widely as Blowfish, and for that reason, we really don't know if that is going to be as strong as Blowfish as well or not. So again, let's quickly talk for the last time that you feed the plain text into the encryption algorithm, use a key, turn it to the cipher, send the cipher using the exact same key and the same decryption algorithm, you're going to get your plain text back. One of the issues that you face when you're using symmetric algorithms is the fact that you need to negotiate the keys, because these are going to be exact keys, right? So think about it. In our example, if Bob wants to send an encrypted message to Alice using symmetric encryption, he must be sure that she has the key to decrypt the message. Yet how should Bob actually get the key to Alice? He cannot send it electronically as an email attachment, because that would make it vulnerable to interception by malicious actors. Nor can he encrypt the key and send it, because Alice would not have any way to decrypt the key. This problem of key negotiation is basically the reason for which that we call symmetric encryptions a weak algorithm. Of course, if you implement this in an environment that people physically meet each other, you're going to solve the problem of key negotiation. However, this problem that you want to fix is not easy for all implications. Think about the time that you want to log into your bank account, and not everybody can visit the bank account all the time, right? Or you get hired for this new company, and on day one, they give you the private key. But then after that, if they want to change the private key, everybody needs to go back to the IT office to get one more. And because the key is being negotiated in plain text, there is always the possibility of interception. For that reason, a completely different approach is taken, which is asymmetric cryptographic algorithm. Let me just go here. So in asymmetric cryptographic algorithm, which is also known as public key infrastructure or PKI or public key cryptography, asymmetric encryption uses 2 keys instead of only 1. The keys are mathematically related and are known as public key and the private key. The public key is known to everyone and can be freely distributed online, while the private key is known only to the individual to whom it belongs. So in our example, when Bob wants to send a secure message to Alice, he uses Alice's public key to encrypt the message. Alice then uses her own private key to decrypt it. Asymmetric cryptography is illustrated here, right? So Bob uses Alice's public key and uses the encryption algorithm to get the ciphertext and send it to Alice, where Alice uses her own private key to decrypt everything. There are several important principles regarding asymmetric encryptions. So the first thing are the key pairs. Unlike symmetric cryptography that uses only one key, asymmetric cryptography requires a pair of keys. Next is the public key. Public keys, by their nature, are designed to be public and do not need to be protected. They can be freely given to anyone or even posted on the internet. Private key in this term must be kept confidential and never be shared. Both directions, asymmetric cryptographic keys can work in both directions. A document encrypted with a public key can be decrypted with the corresponding private key. In the same way, a document encrypted with a private key can be decrypted with its public key. So as you can see, that makes life super easy. Later, when we focus more on PKI, what we're going to see is the presence of a third party called certificate authority, which issues public key certificates, which without that, this infrastructure is not going to work properly. So for the scope of this module, we're going to go this far so that we introduce this, but later we're going to introduce the third party CA or certificate authority so that you guys actually have the full knowledge of how it works. So there are different asymmetric algorithms and variations as well as issues surrounding key management, right? So we have the RSA. The asymmetric algorithm RSA was published in 1977 and hence became the basis for several products. The RSA algorithm multiplies two large prime numbers and computes their product. Next, a number like E is chosen that is less than one of the numbers and a prime factor to another number. And then it's going to be determined by division by those two numbers subtracted by 1. These new values are the public and private exponents, which in this case, the public key and the private key are being generated. Again, we don't want to really go super deep into how these algorithms calculate the public and private key, but sometimes it's nice to have information about how these things happen. I strongly recommend those of you who are interested in mathematics and have a love of algorithms in heart to go and research how these actually work. The scope of our discussions here do not include the details of the algorithms and how they work. So now let's talk about ECC or elliptic curve cryptography, right? This one is also another algorithm that comes to play. The basis of RSA asymmetric encryption security is factoring, right? So we get the factors out of the multiplication and create the exponents out of it. Basically, what happens at the end is the prime numbers make up the values in the RSA. As computers became faster and more powerful, the ability to crack RSA asymmetric encryption by computing the factoring has actually grown. Instead of using factoring as the basis, other research looked at one obscure and actually esoteric branch of mathematics called elliptic curves. In short, an elliptic curve is a set of points that satisfy specific mathematical equations. Let's actually look at it while we're talking about it, right? Elliptic curves pave the way of different forms of asymmetric encryption, which are not based on factoring. Again, factoring, due to the increase of power, is becoming more and more vulnerable because now computers with more power that can calculate all the possibilities, right? So instead of using large prime numbers as with RSA and going through factoring, elliptic curve cryptography uses a sloping curves. An elliptic curve as a function drawn on an XY axis as a gently curved line. By adding the values of 2 points on the curve, a third point on the curve can be derived, of which the inverse is used. As you can see here with ECC, users share one elliptic curve and one point on the curve. One user chooses a secret random number and computes a public key based on a point on the curve. The other user does the same. They can now exchange messages because the shared public keys can generate a private key on an elliptic curve. The difference in size is really big when it comes to the possibilities of getting these algorithms cracked. So all in all together, ECC comes with the smaller key sizes because they're just pointing to a point on the curve, but at the same time is going to be more powerful than how the prime numbers and the factors are being used in RSA. So let's have a knowledge check over here. Which of the following is a function of a digital signature? Who can answer that? Yes, the correct answer is D. Proves message integrity. A digital signature can verify the sender of data, prevent a sender from disowning a message, and prove a message integrity. So this basically is what we get when we go through asymmetric algorithms, right? So you have the plain text, using a key and a hash algorithm, get the digest, using the asymmetric cryptographic algorithm and a private key, get it encrypted, send it over the line through a private key on the other side, just decrypt it and check with the digest mash. And if the hash values are the same and you get the same digest, then you can define that that's the same data that you received. So that's how the digital signatures actually work. They use the hash algorithms. So while we are increasing our power in cryptography, cryptography remains under attack by threat actors for any possible vulnerabilities. There are many threat actors out there that continuously and constantly are attacking the cryptographic algorithms because almost everything that is being sent online now is encrypted. The new field of quantum cryptography defends basically can aid anything in making cryptography more secure, if nothing. Modern cryptographic algorithms are reviewed, tested, and vetted by specialists in cryptography over several years before they are actually released to the public for use. Very few threat actors have the advanced skills needed to even attempt to break an algorithm. However, attackers can use other methods to circumvent strong algorithm, including known ciphertext attacks, downgrade attacks, and taking advantage of improperly implemented algorithms. So as we discussed before, the configuration, the setup, the proper setup of the systems we have, endpoints, and even in the algorithms can prevent these kind of side doors for the attackers to attack, right? So let's talk a little bit about different type of attacks, right? So the known cipher attacks that we know today, when properly implemented, cryptography can prevent threat actors from knowing the plain text or the key. The only item that they can see is the ciphertext itself. Yet, as we said, they can use sophisticated statistical tools to analyze the ciphertext and discover a pattern in the ciphertext, especially considering the computation power out there today, plus the cloud computing power that can get implemented by bad actors. This possibility extremely goes up. This type of attacks are called known ciphertext attack or ciphertext only attack, because all that is known is the ciphertext, though it can still reveal clues that may be mined. Wireless data networks are particularly susceptible to known ciphertext attacks. Threat actors can capture large sets of ciphertext to analyze and then inject their own frames into the wireless transmissions to be able to basically break into it. This is something that you practiced in one of the labs you did, and you noticed that you can use tools like Kali Linux, Kismet, and air cracking in order to get those captured and then compare the values you captured with the rainbow tables and all that to get the wireless password. So the downgrade attacks, because new hardware and software are introduced frequently, they often include backward compatibility so that a newer version can still function with the older version. However, in most instances, the new version must revert to the older and less secure version. In a downgrade attack, an attacker forces system to abandon the current higher security mode of operation and instead fall back to implementing an older and less secure mode. The threat actor can then attack the weaker mode because that weaker mode basically doesn't have any kind of security that can withstand the new attacks. We also have the attacks based on misconfiguration. Most breaches of cryptography are a result of incorrect choice or misconfiguration of the cryptography options, known as misconfiguration implementation. Selecting weak algorithms such as DES or SHA-1 should definitely be avoided since they're no longer secure. Many cryptographic algorithms have several configuration options, and unless careful consideration is given to the options during setup, the cryptography may be improperly implemented, and careless users can also weaken the cryptography if they choose SHA-256. For example, when a much stronger SHA-35512 is available through a simple menu choice. One of the functions and foundations of a hash algorithm is that each digest must be unique. We already discussed this. If it were not unique, then a threat actor could trick users into performing an action that was assumed to be safe, but in reality, it was not. For example, digests are calculated and then posted on websites for files that can be downloaded. Suppose an attacker can infiltrate a website and post a malicious file for download, but when digest was generated for the malicious file, it created the exact same digest as the one posted on the legitimate file. Two files having the same digest is known as a collision. A collision attack is an attempt to find two input strings of a hash function that produce the same exact hash results. Typically, a threat actor would be forced to try all possible combinations until a collision was found. However, a statistical phenomenon called birthday attack makes it easier. It is based on birthday paradox, which says that for someone in a given room to have 50% chance of sharing your birthday, 253 people would need to be in the same room. If, however, you're looking for greater than 50% chance that any two people in the room have the same birthday, you only need to add 23 people. That's because the matches are based on pairs. If you choose yourself as one side of the pair, then you need 253 people to have 253 pairs. In the other words, you combined with 253 other people, make it up all to 253 sets. However, and this is the important and cool part, if you are concerned only with the matches, and it's not about you, any two matches are acceptable, right? Then you only need 23 people in the room, because 23 people can form 253 pairs, when cross-matched with each other. The same situation applies to hashing collisions. It is much harder to find something that collides with a specific hash than it is to find the inputs for all the hashes out there to have the same value. The foundation of the modern technology is the bit or binary digit, right? A bit can either be off or on, much like a light bulb. However, for several years, researchers have been developing a revolutionary type of computer called a quantum computer. Quantum computing relies on the quantum physics using atomic scale units or qubits that can be both 0 and 1 at the exact same time. As a result, one qubit can carry out two separate streams of calculations simultaneously, meaning that quantum computers will be much faster and more efficient than today's computer. Although quantum computers are potentially much more powerful than traditional computers, they're also more delicate and prone to faults. Because the technology is still in the early stages, no commercial-grade quantum computer has been built yet. However, online cloud quantum computing platforms are available to provide developers with an online platform to create applications of quantum computers. Developers can also experiment with quantum algorithms on the traditional computers. Quantum cryptography takes advantage of quantum computing for increasing cybersecurity. One subcategory of quantum cryptography is quantum communication or secure telecommunication. Because eavesdropping changes the physical nature of the information, users in quantum communication exchange can easily detect eavesdroppers. Quantum computing also has a drawback for security. Asymmetric cryptography begins by multiplying two prime numbers, as we discussed, a strong method because it is difficult for today's computers to determine the prime numbers that make up the values, or as we said, factoring. However, a single quantum computer could perform factoring by using hundreds of atoms in parallel to quickly factor huge numbers, rendering virtually all current asymmetric cryptographic algorithms useless. While some researchers think that quantum computers will create a cryptographic apocalypse soon, or maybe 10 years from now, most security professionals think it is 30 years or more in the future before quantum computers can render cryptographic algorithms useless. Proposals for new quantum-safe encryption that could not be broken by quantum computers are currently being developed. Such encryptions are called post-quantum cryptography, or cryptographic algorithms that are secure against an attack by a quantum computer. So let's do a quick knowledge check over here. Which type of cryptographic attack attempts to find toe input a string of a hash function that produced the same hash result? Okay, the survey says birthday attack. A birthday attack is a type of collision attack based on the birthday paradox, which states that there is a 50% chance of any two people sharing birthday if there are only 23 people in the room. That's the algorithm is being used for that type of attack. Okay, now let's talk about use of the cryptography. Cryptography can actually be applied through software or hardware. There is a relatively new technology known as blockchain that uses cryptography as its basis. And I believe you have all heard about the blockchain. Anyone who have tried to invest in cryptocurrency and anything like that has at least heard that once and knows about it a little bit, right? So let's go through and talk about encryption through software. So cryptography can be implemented through software running on a device. Encryption can also be performed on a larger scale by encrypting the entire disk drive. Cryptographic software can be used to encrypt or decrypt files one by one. However, this process can be cumbersome. Instead, protecting groups of files, such as all files in a specific folder, can take advantage of the OS's file system. A file system is a method used by the operating system to store, retrieve, and organize files. Protecting individual files or multiple files through the file system cryptography can be performed using third-party software or operating system cryptographic options. Some of these third-party softwares are available for performing any kind of cryptography encryption on the drive. You have the GNU Privacy Guard, you have AXCrypt, Folder Lock, VeraCrypt, different kind of softwares. And when it comes to different operating systems, you basically can have different options to choose from. Modern operating systems provide encryption support natively, like Microsoft Encryption File System, or EFS, is a cryptographic system for Windows releases that use the Windows NT file system, or NTFS. While Apple's File Vault performs a similar function because the technology is tightly integrated with the file system, file encryption and decryptions are transparent to the user. Any file created in an encrypted folder or added to an encrypted folder is automatically encrypted. When an authorized user opens a file, it is decrypted as data is read from the disk. When a file is saved, the operating system encrypts the data as it is being written to the disk. So basically, data is going to be transparent to the user. Cryptography can also be applied to entire disk instead of individual files or groups of files. This practice is known as full disk encryption, or FDE, and protects all data on the hard drive. One example of full disk encryption software is that included in Microsoft Windows known as BitLocker. BitLocker drive encryption software basically encrypts the entire system volume, including Windows registry and temporary files that might hold confidential information. BitLocker prevents attackers from accessing data by booting from another operating system or placing the hard drive in another computer. It is kind of like common, or let's say it used to be common, for the attackers to bring the entire hard drive into a different computer and encrypt it, trying to decrypt it over there. Physical attack on a computer, removing the hard drive, taking it to a lab, connecting it to a new computer, and trying to steal the information. Or boot from another operating system, consider this the secondary hard drive, and then trying to have access. With BitLocker in place, this literally doesn't happen. Hardware encryption, right? So we discussed software encryption suffers from the same files and applications program. It basically can be broken into, right? It can be subject to attacks to exploit its vulnerability. As more secure option, cryptography can be embedded in hardware. Hardware encryption cannot be exploited like software encryption. Hardware encryption can be applied to USB devices, standard hard drives, and anything of that nature. More sophisticated hardware encryption options include self-encrypting drives, the Trusted Platform Module, or TPM, and hardware security module. Those of you who have tried to install their Windows 11 on your machines, maybe about 9 months, 10 months ago, you have noticed the checker looks for a TPM. And if you don't have a Trusted Platform Module, TPM, you cannot install Windows 11 anymore. So as you can see, even the operating system and softwares are now focusing on making sure you have proper encryption in place. Many instances of data leakage are the result of USB flash drives being lost or stolen. Although data can be secured with software-based cryptographic application programs, vulnerabilities in the program can open the door for attackers to access the data. As an alternative, encrypted hardware-based USB drives, such as flash drives that can be used with your fingerprint or any kind of in-house encryption or onboard encryption, are being used to prevent the types of software-based attacks. The drive resembles standard USB flash drives with some significant differences. Encrypted hardware-based USB drives will not connect to a computer until the correct password has been provided. All data copied on the USB flash drive is automatically encrypted. The external cases are designed to be tamper-resistant, so attackers cannot disassemble the drives. Administrators can remotely control and track activity on the devices. Compromised or stolen drives can be remotely disabled. Just as an encrypted hardware-based USB flash drive will automatically encrypt any data stored on it, self-encrypting drives or SEDs can protect all files stored on them as well. When the computer or other device with an SED is initially powered up, the drive and the host device perform an authentication process. If the authentication process fails, the drive can be configured simply to deny any access to the drive, even perform a cryptographic erase on the specific blocks of data, wipe it out. A cryptographic erase deletes the decryption keys so that no one else can recover the data after that. It is also impossible to install the drive on another computer to read its contents. A set of specifications for SEDs developed by the Trusted Computing Group or TCG in OPAL. SEDs that support OPAL use hardware encryption technology to secure data stored on them. OPAL also ensures the interoperability of the SEDs among different vendors. So like IEEE, following OPAL means all of these SEDs can be used amongst different devices that follow those. A hardware security module, or HSM, is a removable external cryptographic device. An HSM can be a USB device, an expansion card, a device that directly connects to the computer. It can even be the Apple Watch, or it can be any kind of device that generates a connection with the computer. It performs accelerated symmetric and asymmetric encryption. And the good thing is malwares cannot compromise it because it's not writable. A trusted platform module, or TPM, is a chip on the motherboard of the computer that provides cryptographic service. For example, TPM includes true random number generator instead of a PRNG, as well as a full support for asymmetric encryption. TPM can also generate public and private keys. Also, TPM can measure and test key components as the computer is starting up. It will prevent computer from booting if system files or data have been tampered with or even altered. With TPM, if the hard drive is moved to another computer, the user must enter a recovery password before gaining access to the system volume. Otherwise, it's no more accessible. Finally, let's talk a bit about the blockchain, right? So consider the company Sirius Scooters that we're going to be using as an example here, right? Let me actually talk over here, right? Several suppliers sell raw material to Sirius. They sell tires, metal, plastic, seats, nuts, bolts, washers, you just name it, right? Sirius sells their scooters to many retailers and then deposits the proceeds into their bank accounts so that they can pay their suppliers. Employees, others also get paid from the same bank account. In the accounting department, a ledger is maintained of all transactions of raw materials that are bought and scooters that are going to be sold. The ledger serves as a central repository of accounting information for Sirius scooters. So this is what you exactly are looking at right now. The problem with that system is that this type of accounting is not efficient. It is inefficient for each entity to maintain its own ledger because suppliers, retailers, and bank duplicates parts of the transaction, they cannot rely on each other, because what happens if one supplier to Sirius records a transmission in error? It may take a long time to correct the error because the supplier must contact Sirius, who may need to contact its bank and even its retailer to track down the error and fix the error. Instead, what if Sirius scooters and everyone else shared a single tamper-evident ledger? It would eliminate or reduce paper processes, speeding up transactions, and actually reducing the time for every single one of these transactions, and consequently increasing efficiencies. With a shared ledger, any transaction would be recorded only once and could not be altered. All parties must also give consensus before a new transaction is added to the network. Having a single shared ledger is what you can see over here. So all of these parties are using the single shared ledger instead of having ledgers everywhere. See, in the previous design, everyone has their own ledgers. Well, we say, hey, let's have all of them just focused there. This ledger, this alternative, is called a blockchain. A blockchain literally, let me go back here so you can see these. A blockchain literally is a shared, immutable ledger that facilitates the process of recording transactions and tracking assets in a business network. At a high level, blockchain technology allows a network of computers to agree at irregular intervals on the true state of distributed ledger. It is a system in which a record of transaction made is maintained across several computers that are actually linked in a peer-to-peer network. Blockchain relies on cryptographic hash algorithm, most notably on SHA-256, to record their transactions. This makes it computationally infeasible to try to replace a block or insert a new block of information without the approval of all entities involved. So every time a change in that ledger needs to happen, we need to get the confirmation from all parties. So if an attacker is only attacking the ledger, no change is going to happen because all the other parties are not consenting to that. So unless every single computer in the blockchain network is compromised, the blockchain network cannot be compromised. And that's the power that comes along with having the blockchain technology design. So we will discuss the blockchain more in details later down the road in this series. So for now, that's the level of details we wanted to get it. So let's do a quick knowledge activity. Which of the following is an example of FDE? And the survey says a BitLocker. BitLocker encrypts the entire system volume and prevents attackers from accessing data by booting from another OS. The other encryption methods encrypt individual files, folders, or transmitted data. So with that being said, let's quickly overview what we discussed here. We talked about cryptography, and we said it's the practice of transforming information into a secure form so that unauthorized persons cannot access it. We talked about cryptography can provide confidentiality, integrity, authentication, non-repudiation, and obfuscation. We said one variation of cryptographic algorithm is based on the device that is used in the cryptographic process. Another variation is the amount of data that is processed at a time. We talked about hashing creates a unique digital fingerprint called a digest, which represents the contents of the original material. We said symmetric cryptography, also called private key cryptography or private key infrastructure, uses a single key to encrypt and decrypt data. We talked about asymmetric cryptography, also known as PKI or public key cryptography, uses 2 keys instead of 1. Because cryptography provides a high degree of protection, it remains under attack. Quantum computing relies on quantum physics using atomic scale units or qubits that can be both 0 and 1 at the same time. Cryptography can be applied through either software or hardware, and hardware encryption cannot be exploited like software cryptography is. And finally, we introduced blockchain, and we said a blockchain is a shared, immutable ledger that facilitates the process of recording transactions and tracking assets in a business network, and same in a cybersecurity network. With that being said, we stop the recording.